All right. Welcome to Pro Football's first 50 years, where we take the past and we bring it back to life. Now, I'm just talking the first 50 years, 1920 and 1970. If you go back in time into the 20s, into the 30s and all, in this particular game we're going to be talking about is 1930. You can find on the internet, like, it might be a box score, and it shows you, who scored what touchdown and what the final score was, where the game was played at. You might find the starting lineups for both teams. You might even find maybe what the attendance was. But exactly what happened during each and individual game in the first 50 years? Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game in the first 50 years. Now, there might be little, especially once you get into the 50s and the 60s and all, might be some little videos here and there, on each particular game. Like each team has their own like highlight reels for the year and stuff like that. But, not every game has little videos and everything. So, we get a chance. And with this particular game here, certain teams have very, very good coverage through the newspaper. And this game in particular, once again, thanks to the Green Bay Press Gazette, we're going to go play by play, find out exactly what happened during this game that I'm going to talk about here today. So, but just a little news flash here for you. There's no fancy videos or nothing going on, right? All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes. So if that's all right with you, let's get it on. So today's game we're going to talk about, it's kind of like it's like a little bit of a home and home, shall we say. The week before, on October 19th, 1930, the Green Bay Packers played in Minneapolis against the Redjackets at Nicollet Park. Now, here's a week later, the Minneapolis Redjackets are visiting the Green Bay Packers and playing at City Stadium. The Minneapolis Redjackets were not a very good team. Matter of fact, this would be their final season in the NFL. They made two different attempts to stay in the NFL. Oh, looks like the Rams might have just won in overtime, maybe. Big game, possibly a big game here between the Rams and the Seattle Seahawks. Anyway, I do apologize. The Minneapolis Marines in the early 20s were in the NFL. Actually, it was, I think, 1921 and 22. 1920 and 21 was the American Professional Football Association. It wasn't the NFL until 1922. But the Minneapolis Marines were around the early 20s for 2 seasons. Did not do very well when they played league games. Now, they played other teams who were not in the NFL. But when they played teams in the NFL, they just did not fare very well. Well, the same thing here. They were not part of the NFL for a little bit of few years. And they came back in 1929 and then in 1930. And this would be their last season in the NFL. I believe they won one league game in 1929 and one league game in 1930. So they were not very good. The Packers were very good. The Packers in 1929 won the NFL title. They would win the NFL title in 1930 and they would win the title in 1931 as well, becoming the first overall three-peat in NFL history. 29, 30, and 31. So the Packers were very good. The Packers, in fact, were started the season off 8-0, and then they started stumbling a little bit toward the end. And the 1930 season was the title race was very, very close indeed. Packers finished the season with a winning percentage of .769. The New York Giants finished a winning percentage of .765. So by .004, the Green Bay Packers beat the New York Giants to win the 1930 NFL championship. There was no title games from 1920 to 1932. 1932, there was like a playoff game, I guess, because the Portsmouth Spartans and the Chicago Bears both finished with records of 6-1. So they played like a playoff game or decide who won the title. And the Bears would wind up winning in a hockey stadium. They would win 9-0. But for the most part, from 1920 to 1932, there were no championship games scheduled. 1933 is when they started playing championship games. But Green Bay Packers this year were very, very good. Let me just show you here. We'll show you. I'll show you. You know what the Packers their schedule was, and let's see here. All right, here we go. Okay, so if you notice here with the Packers, they started the season off. They played the Oshkosh All-Stars, and they won that 46-0. They would beat the Cardinals, the Bears, the Giants, and the Yellow Jackets. Then they beat the Red Jackets the week before, so they started off 5-0. After this game, newsflash, they would win this game 19-0. So they would be 6-0. On their way, they would win the next two games to be an 8-0. Then they would lose to the Cardinals, they would lose to the Giants, and things got really, really a little tight toward the end down there. And actually here, the final game of the season, it just goes to show you how crazy this was. The both teams missed extra points in this game. Had the Spartans made their extra point in this game, this final game, they didn't miss the extra point, the Green Bay Packers would have had 4 losses. The Green Bay Packers, what would they have been? 9? They would have been 9-4. Had the Portsmouth Spartans made this extra point, the Giants would have been the champions of the league. It just goes to show you how crazy it was back then. Right? So as I said, the week before this game that we're talking about here, the Green Bay Packers played in Minneapolis against those Red Jackets in Minneapolis, Minnesota at Nicollet Park. Whoops, where's my, there we go, Nicollet Park right here. Right, but this week right here, we're playing at City Stadium. Show you the Red Jackets. I mean, once again, they played 9 league games. They were 1-7-1. They just, and that's the problem back then, back in the day, is that, if you obviously, if you can't win games, you get small crowds. And obviously, if you get small crowds, it's tough. It's tough to pay your players, but it's also hard to get new talent, better talent. And because obviously back then, as understandably, if you had somebody who comes out who's a good player, they want to get paid. But if you don't have enough money to pay the players, it makes it very, very difficult to obviously to be a good franchise. It's very difficult to have a bunch of players where you're paying them a minimum amount of money and have them win the championship. It's very, very difficult. All right, but as we see here, and another one of the things that just I kind of love it back then. Right, you'll notice here that the Green Bay, the Minneapolis Redjackets played the Green Bay Packers here on the 19th. Well, between the 19th and the 26th, they had 2 games that were scheduled. Neither one of them, let's see which one. Okay, the Milwaukee Nighthawk game got canceled. This game here got canceled. Then somehow they had the Oshkosh All-Stars scheduled and didn't want to plan against that game either, I guess. But you'll notice, how things were. It's kind of funny how it was. They had a game scheduled in between the 2 games with the Packers. They had a game scheduled. They were trying to play on Thursday. So basically, they were trying to play like 3 games within 8 days, which is just, But it was to make money. That's all it was. But you'll notice here, they were playing the Green Bay Packers. They lost here. They did okay against a couple of teams that were not in the league, like Spring Valley Northland Oils. They beat them 90-0. They played the Des Moines White Line Tigers, who once again were not in the NFL. beat them 38-0. But when they played teams in the NFL like the Bears, they lost 20-7. The Brooklyn Dodgers, who were in the NFL, lost 34-0. The Providence Steamroller, who were in the NFL, 10-0. They played the Portsmouth Spartans and 42-0. They lost there. Kind of makes you wonder how they beat the Portsmouth Spartans the first time. They beat them 13-0. But then they went on the road and they played Portsmouth in Portsmouth, Ohio. The Spartans became the Detroit Lions, I believe it was in 1934. But you could just say that they just not fare well at all against teams in the league. Now let me go here. Show you, do a little commentary here on the Redjackets, a little bit of history on the Redjackets. We don't really need too much of a history on the Packers. The Packers came in 1921. In 1920, the first official league year, as I said, 1920-21, it was called the American Professional Football Association. It didn't turn the NFL until 1922. But in 1920, the Chicago Cardinals, right, we all know them, were in the league, and the Decatur Staleys were in the league in 1920. 1921, the Decatur Staleys became the Chicago Staleys. 1922, the Chicago Staleys became the Chicago Bears. So the Bears and the Cardinals have been in the league since 1920. Green Bay Packers entered the league in 1921, and in 1925, the New York Giants entered the league. So those are the first four teams that entered the league. But as I said, the Redjackets here, actually it was the Marines initially. We'll check this out. All right, let me share my screen. All right, here we go. Marines and the Redjackets. Okay. Seahawks scored. Now it's 37-36. I wonder if they're going to go for two. Go for the win. Minneapolis Marines were an early professional football team that existed from 1905 until 1928. The team did not play in 1918 or 1925 through 1926 and was later resurrected from 1929 to 1930 under the Minneapolis Redjacket name. The Marines were originally owned by the Marine Athletic Club of Minneapolis and later by the Minneapolitans, John Dunn and Val Ness. The Marines played their earliest games in the sandlots of Minneapolis and at Minnehaha Park. They made their first appearance at Lexington Park in 1909 and Nicollet Park in 1910. From 1912 to 1914, the team rented the North Minneapolis Athletic Association grounds at the 25th Avenue North and Washington Avenue in Minneapolis, a site now overrun by Interstate 94. The Marines moved to Nicollet Park in 1915 and played there until they disbanded as the Redjackets in 1930. The Minneapolis Marines were the first Minnesota-based team to join the National Football League, predating the Duluth Eskimos, who came around 1923, and the Minnesota Vikings, who came in 1961. All right, the origins. Well, let's see here. Well, some of it, they started off as it was like a baseball team also as well, too. Formed the Marines baseball team in 1905. And in that same year, some players decided to form a Marines football team as well. The team shared some players and managers until 1912, when the Marines baseball team played its final game. Rhodes left the amateur Marines baseball team in 1910 to play professional baseball. Let's see. They played in the sand, the Marines football team played in the sandlots from 1905 to 1909, but first in the self-reported 115-pound weight class. And then they moved up to the 140-pound weight class. Whew. All right, let me go up there. The professional team, the Minneapolis Beavers, not the Marines, were the biggest independent football attraction in Minneapolis through 1909. But that would soon change. In September 1910, the Marines selected Frank J. Hammer, an apprentice in the newspaper trade, to be the team's new manager. Under Hammer, the team took steps toward professionalism by demanding prize purses for games and later by holding fundraisers for the team. It appears that this transition also coincided with the formation of the Marine Athletic Club. And, of course, there was World War II, which obviously probably put a hold on some things here. All right, so we got post-war Marines. The Marines enjoyed a 10-2-4 overall record from 1919 and 1920 on schedules that included games against the Hammond All-Stars and the Decatur Staleys, or the Chicago Bears, as we see right here. But the Marines in the NFL. 1920, John Dunn decided to stop playing and instead focus on managing the team. 1921, he sought to join a new Western professional league based in Omaha, Nebraska. When that league never materialized, Dunn and a business partner, Val Ness, who had played for the Marines in 1919, secured a franchise for the team in the National Football League. But in 1921, it was called the American Professional Football Association. Dunn then recruited Ruben Ursula to play and coach the team. Oh, Seattle went for 2, got it, and they won, and Seattle is now in first place. They got a record of 12-3. The Rams are 11-4. Anyway, I do apologize. Let's see, the Marines won their first NFL game they ever played in at Nicollet Park when they beat the Columbus Panhandles 28-0. Columbus Panhandles sucked. But overall, from 1921 to 24, the Marines won only 4 games and finished 4-18-2 in the NFL. 15-21-2 overall, including non-NFL opponents. Let's see. John Dunn was elected vice president of the National Football League in 1922, but after posting an 0-6 record in 1924, Dunn folded the team, yet he retained the franchise and his position as vice president. He would serve in that role through the 1928 season. And then for a few seasons, the Marines were in limbo. And then they became the Redjackets. In late May 1928, Herb Joesting announced he would captain and manage an entrant in the NFL with former Gophers player Ken Haycraft as his assistant. Let's see here. This is where they get their kind of their red jacket name. Behind the scenes, Dunn and Ness paid the NFL franchise fees for 1928 to revive the team as the Minneapolis Redjackets, a name that perhaps continued the military theme that Dunn had adopted, first with the Marines, a name he inherited, and later with the 151st Field Artillery, the name for his minor league football team and practice squad. It is conceivable that the name Redjackets may have been inspired by the 1st Minnesota Infantry Regiment that fought in the American Civil War and wore red shirts. As a football team, this is just too much for me. As a football team, the Redjackets wore red helmets, red jerseys, red pants, red socks. On the sideline, the Redjackets wore hooded coats in the same color. Too much. Too much. All right. The Redjackets finished 1-9 in the NFL in 1929, 3-9 including non-NFL games. And so for 1930, John Dunn recruited former Gophers captain George Gibson. Oh, there he is. Dunn and Ness sold season tickets for their team for the first time in 1930. And while the Redjackets game versus Nagurski and the Bears drew a crowd, the Redjackets only won one game in 1930 against the Portsmouth Spartans to the relocation in Detroit in 1934, where they became the Detroit Lions. After he lost the Chicago Bears at Wrigley Field on November 2nd, and after the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets lost to the Chicago Cardinals at Comiskey Park that same day, Dunn sold most of his franchise player contracts to Frankfurt and sold 3 player contracts to the Green Bay Packers. It's not clear whether Dunn and Ness had sold the franchise per se to Frankfurt, because later reports indicated that they still had a stake in the league. Either way, the Frankfurt Athletic Association would oversee finishing their schedule for both the Yellow Jackets and the Red Jackets. And for the remainder of the 1930 season, the manager and coaches of Frankfurt Athletic Association would use players from both rosters to play in the Yellow Jacket and Red Jacket games. Total 20 players, included 10 original Red Jackets and 10 original Yellow Jackets, jumped back and forth between both teams. And in the case of the original Red Jackets, 3 players, Gibson, Barriger, and Joesting, appeared in every single Red Jacket and Yellow Jacket game after November 2nd. The Red Jackets finished the season with a 1-7-1 record, 3-7-1, including non-NFL games. Minneapolis would not hold another NFL franchise for the next 3 decades until the Minnesota Vikings debuted in 1961. So, there's a little other stuff in here, but they were just not a very good team. You had to win football games, and if you didn't win football games, the chances of you hanging around were not very good. All right, but this game's played at City Stadium, right, home of the Green Bay Packers. So let's go a little bit over City Stadium, shall we? I got a couple pictures here. Now this one here is in 1931. It's the first aerial view of City Stadium. It gets a lot more better defined as we go along, as the years go along. But this is September 27, 1931, the first official aerial photograph of Green Bay Stadium, or City Stadium, by Otto Stiller. The Green Bay Packers on this day beat the Bears 7-0. Now you'll see right here. You see, I mean, it's this. You got the grandstands on the side here. On this side over here, I'm imagining this was probably the Packers side here because there's more stands over here, and then it might be the visiting team. I'm imagining. Just. I don't even know if these are just people standing here at the end, at the back of the end zone, or if there's any kind of grandstand or seats there or anything. Same thing back here. But as the years, this is 1931. The game that we're playing is in 1930. I'm going to talk about is 1930. So, this is pretty much what it looked like. It wasn't sold out like this, but this is what the stadium looked like anyway. As years went on, we're going to show you some more pictures, a couple more pictures. This here, this end zone here, they just put some seats here. But then this all became a horseshoe right here. It was a well-defined horseshoe from here all the way around. See how it's like thin here, and then it shoots up here, and it goes, right, and then it's a real thin back here, and I don't even know these is even connected. These may not even been connected here. But in these pictures ahead, you'll see that this is all one nice looking horseshoe. This is all connected back here, right? So, all right, I got a couple more pictures here. All right. Okay, now this is much better. This is probably what I'm going to say, probably well into the 40s. But you'll notice here the very well-defined horseshoe. Very, very well-defined horseshoe here. See? And then this one end here, they got some seats sitting there. It's very, very well defined here. This is probably, it got to be about close to like 25,000 people could fit in the stadium at one time. And I'm going to guess this is probably pretty darn close to it, about what the 25,000 people look like. All right, but we got the horseshoe-shaped stadium was made of wood and originally did not have any toilet facilities. It stood behind East High School and next to the East River. Packers used the school for locker room facilities, but visiting teams often dressed at their hotel, usually at the Hotel Northland, before the game rather than use the lockers at East High. The stadium originally seated 6,000 fans, and its capacity was gradually expanded to 25,000. Packers compiled a record of 88, 41, and 7 at City Stadium, including the NFL championship seasons in 29, 30, 31, 36, 39, and 44. However, City Stadium never hosted an NFL championship game. Of the 4 championship games the Packers played in during the years at City Stadium, the teams hosted only one, the 1939 title game, which was played in Milwaukee instead. And in 1939, that's when the Packers beat the Giants 27-0. Packers were also in the 38 championship game, and the 37 championship game, I believe it was. And they were in the 37. I know they lost that. They definitely lost the 38 championship game in the Polo Grounds. The Giants beat them 23-17. Los City Stadium was the Packers' first home field in 1933. During the worst of the Great Depression, they began to play part of their home schedule in Milwaukee. After holding one contest at Borchard Field in 1933, the Packers played 2 or 3 home games each year in Milwaukee at State Fair Park in West Allis from 1934 to 1951 and at Marquette Stadium in 1952. The games were moved to County Stadium after it opened in 1953. The practice continued through 1994, after which they were again based solely in Green Bay, where they played all their games strictly in Green Bay. That's why, like, if you go into the 70s and 80s, when the Packers had a home game, some of them were in Green Bay, Lambeau Field. Some of them were played in Milwaukee. All right, we got one more little tidbit here on City Stadium. This one has a nice little color photo. Well, it's like more like a color painting, shall we say, I guess. It's not an actual photo, right? But you can see the very, very well-defined horseshoe here. Right, here's the water out over here. Right, here's the stands back here. They're not connected. I guess they didn't make, for whatever, didn't want to make a bowl out of it. I don't know, but it's a nice defined horseshoe here. So I guess this was 1948. A picture, 1948, City Stadium in 1948. All right, just a little bit here, and then we'll get on our way to talking about the game. City Stadium, known as East Stadium from 1962 to 2002, is an American football stadium in Green Bay, Wisconsin. The stadium was built in 1925 for use with the Green Bay East High School, located just to the south of the stadium, and the Green Bay Packers of the National Football League. City Stadium was the third home field for the Packers after Hagemeister Park and Bellevue Park, and remained as such until 1956. During this time, it was expanded from about 5,000 seats to 25,000 seats. In 1933, the Packers began splitting their home games between Green Bay and Milwaukee. They practiced, once again, as I mentioned before, that lasted until 1994, when they returned to playing all their games in Green Bay. By the early 1950s, City Stadium was too small and lacked the features expected in modern football stadiums of the time. A bond initiative passed in the city of Green Bay to fund a new stadium for the Packers. After the Packers moved to New City Stadium, later named Lambeau Field, the 1957 season, Old City Stadium was downsized and continued to be used by East High School. In the early 2000s, the facility underwent multiple renovations, including enhancements to the playing field and stands, as well as the installation of features honoring the stadium's history as it related to the Packers. This included a historic marker and a sign for the Packers Heritage Trail. All right, just a little bit here. Green Bay Packers were founded in 1919 by Curly Lambeau and George Whitney Calhoun. From 1919 to 1922, they played their games at Hagemeister Park, a recreational area that hosted various sports and outdoor activities. Small wooden bleachers were constructed, with some fans lining the playing field or sitting on their cars to watch the games. After the property was used to build a new, get that out of there. after the property was used to build a new Green Bay East High School, the Packers moved to the other side of the East River to Bellevue Park, which had been constructed to house a local baseball team that also played at Hagemeister. The wood used for the bleachers at Hagemeister was reused to build a grandstand and bleachers at Bellevue. Bellevue Park had its challenges, though, with the field dimensions more conducive to baseball, its location far from town, and poor parking. After 2 seasons at Bellevue in 1923 and 1924, demand for a dedicated football stadium for the Packers grew. What we got here? City Stadium was built just north of Green Bay East High School, meaning it was adjacent to the former Hagemeister Park. The stadium was developed for use by Green East High School and Green Bay West High School, but in reality, the stadium was built to support the Packers. At its original capacity, the wooden bleachers fit more than 5,000 fans. It did not have any locker rooms. Meaning the Packers had to use adjacent facilities, including the downtown Columbus Club, while visiting teams usually got dressed at their hotel before coming to the stadium. Packers played exclusively at City Stadium for their home games until 1933, and when they began playing some games in Milwaukee. 1933, they played one home game at Borchard Field before playing a few home games a year at Wisconsin State Fair Park from 1934 to 1951. 1952, they played 3 games at Marquette Stadium while awaiting the completion of Milwaukee County Stadium, where they would play until 1994, when the team returned to playing all their home games in Green Bay. In addition to the high school and NFL games, City Stadium also hosted a few St. Norbert Green Knights football games in the 30s and the 50s. And I'll just read a little bit of this here. During the stadium's early years, seating capacity would fluctuate based on expected crowd sizes, with temporary seating built prior to games. Stadium underwent different improvements and expansions throughout its life. The original wood fence was replaced with a wire and canvas fence in 1927, although a wooden fence returned 8 years later. 1929, a public announcement system with 8 speakers around the stadium was installed. So for this game, they'd have a public announcement system, this game from 1930. Lighting to allow for high school teams to play night games on Fridays was added in 1935. From 1936 to 1940, City Stadium underwent its most significant enhancement. A locker room for the Packers was built underneath the south stands in 1936, while a year later, a new press box, game clock, and fence was added, while the old bleachers were either replaced or significantly repaired. Seating for 5,000 more fans and better toilet facilities were also added. The Packers announced another project the next year to add another 6,500 seats to the stadium by connecting the 2 grandstands, which formed a horseshoe shape. Let's see. This project, which was funded by a grant, also added new restrooms, better training areas, and a stage for the Lumberjack Band. Another grant in 1940 funded a new sandstone wall that formed the new front entrance for the stadium. 1956, games from City Stadium were televised for the first time, with 3 games being aired on CBS. There you go. All right, so, I got 2 articles here from 2 different papers. One is like from whatever you want to call the Minnesota kind of side to it, right? And then the other one is from the Green Bay, once again, the Green Bay Press Gazette. And, there's no doubt about it that they love their football in Green Bay. And very, very thankful for the Green Bay Press Gazette, because any home game that the Packers had, they have a play-by-play description of what happened. You can't find that there are other papers out there. There's some clubs that get followed very, very well that they do have play-by-play, but not many also. This is a treat. This certainly is a treat. So first, excuse me, I'm going to go And we're going to go over, it's a small little ad here by the Star Tribune, page 7 of the Star Tribune. Packers again defeat the Redjackets squad 19-0, as I said. Right, remember, the week before, October 19th, 1930, these two teams played, but they played in Minneapolis in Nicollet Park. The Minneapolis attack halted as Green Bay wins its 6th straight. Now, once again, I mean, these would actually wind up being the two teams at the top at the end of the season. Green Bay was number 1 and the Giants were number 2. But Brooklyn was, at this point in time, was 4-1-1. The Portsmouth Spartans, 4-2-1. Providence Steamroller, 4-2-1. The Bears actually here had 3 losses, but they started coming on toward the end. They really started coming on toward the end, and they were a decent team that year. All right. And just this goes to show you right here. There's a little bit of a from West Virginia. This is like college football here, right? But you'll notice here that if you're a tackle on the offensive line, you play tackle and defense. Guard, center, guard, tackle, and you're an end. Right? It's just the way it is. If you're the fullback, you like right behind. Yeah, I mean, they could obviously move you around a little bit, but you were pretty much like a linebacker if you were the fullback. If you were the halfback, you were more or less kind of like the cornerbacks. And if you were the quarterback, you were the safety. All right, the Green Bay Packers won their 6th straight game in the National Professional Football League competition here today, defeating the Redjackets 19-0. The Bays scored in each of the first 3 periods while Minneapolis threatened but once, when Pederson intercepted a Packer pass and carried the ball to the Bay 10-yard line. The Packers line held and the Jackets' chance of scoring passed. Taking to the air, the Packers scored in the first after Dilweg received the oval from Lewellen and the latter plunged across for the 6 points. Herber's kick was wide. Another pass to Dilweg in the second put the ball in position for Lidberg to carry it across. Herber again missed the boot. A pass Herber to FitzGibbons accounted for the Packers' touchdown in the third as the latter dashed 25 yards to make the count making the touchdown. Molenda's placement was good, making the score 19-0. The Jackets' pass game met the same fate here as when it was in the Bay. When the Bays played in Minneapolis or Minnesota. The Packers broke up every attempted Jacket pass, and they were unable to complete a try. And the same thing the week before. When the Packers played in Minneapolis, the Red Jackets couldn't complete a pass. So basically, they won 2 games in a row against the Packers, and they couldn't complete 1 pass. Packers kicked off and forced the Jackets to punt on 3rd down and then upset the schedule with a 3rd down pass. Lewellen to Dilweg that caught Minneapolis off guard and started the Bay rampage. The Bays netted 12 first downs and made 157 yards on 52 plays. I believe that's 52 rushing plays. Jackets plunged on 5 first downs and totaled 52 yards on 28 plays, meaning the 20. I'm assuming. We'll find out a little bit more when we get to the Green Bay Press-Gazette. But this quite possibly could mean they ran the ball 28 times and got a total of 52 yards. It just goes to show you they were just totally outclassed. Here's the starting lineups. The Red Jackets, what they had? 1, 2, 3. The Red Jackets had 4 substitutes. Packers had quite a few. Now, one thing... They did do quite a bit back then was if the game was lopsided or if they go into the 4th quarter or so, to protect your good players, they would put the subs in there. Because, the medical facilities were not quite as good as they are nowadays. And, obviously players nowadays get hurt. Well, they also got hurt back then as well. So that was one thing they did do. If they had a comfortable lead, they would just start pulling their starters, put the subs in there. So that was the Star Tribune. All right, and now we'll go over much more in-depth and detail look at this game with the Green Bay Press Gazette. Now, it's 2 pages, not 2 full pages, but the first one is got a little, starts off on a little summary. Also shows you the starting lineups for the teams. So let's go to page 13. Yep, page 13 of the Green Bay Press Gazette. All right. Packers whip Minneapolis, score 19-0. Now we'll come up here to the right upper hand corner, or the right side over here. Right? It says over here, Packers got 6 in a row. Once again, this is the lineup that they have, the starting lineup that they have. You know, once again, as they mentioned in the article, that Packers scored in the first 3 periods. They missed the first 2 extra points, and the third one they made the extra point, 19-0. Redjackets with 1, 2, 3, 4 substitutes. The Packers had quite a few more. The referee was Kahn from Chicago, umpire Laurie from Chicago, and head linesman was Johnson from Chicago. So we got young players look good in 6 victory. Green Bay uses passes and running game to beat the Gophers. Now, when they mean Gophers, the Minnesota, I guess, Gophers, University of Minnesota, the Gophers. So this team's from Minnesota, so I guess they call them the Gophers, I guess. I don't know. As you said, once again, the schedule right here. All right, that's the schedule, the standings. Green Bay and the Giants wind up 1-2, and right now they're 1-2. All right. So, here's a little bit of an overview of the game. The youngsters on Green Bay team came into their own at the City Stadium here Sunday, and with the aid of the Packers' powerful line, rode roughshod over the Minneapolis Redjackets to a 19-0 victory. It was the Packers' 6th straight victory in the National Football League competition and kept the team's record unmarred by defeat in the race for another championship. More than 6,000 fans saw the game, which was played in ideal weather conditions. Arnold Herber and Dave Zoodmulder, who a few short years ago heard the cheers of Green Bay high school fans, Sunday heard shouts of acclaim by the pro football followers for their exploits. Herber played more than 3/4 of the game and turned in a fine performance, working from a halfback position. He hurled passes, knocked them down on defense, and did some fine blocking and ball carrying. Dave, who relieved Herber, kept up the good work, tearing off some fine gains through the Red Jacket line and doing more than his share on defense. FitzGibbons also stars. With this pair was a newcomer to Green Bay this year, who also had his day, Paul FitzGibbons, former Cardinal. Fitz hasn't been used much this year, but when called on for action Sunday, did more than his share. Fitz grabbed 1 pass for a touchdown, intercepted another, and on a great play, and in turn in some of the finest blocking ever witnessed here. On one play, he took out 3 men who tried to get Herber, throwing his body against them like a thunderbolt, and Herber got clear for a gain of 15 yards. Again, Green Bay's linemen played like the champions they are, from end to end. The forward line functioned smoothly, although it was changed from time to time. Lavern Dilweg and Michael, as I call him, were the only 2 linemen who played the entire game, and they played as they alone can play. Mike often broke through the Red Jacket forward wall to get the ball carry behind the line of scrimmage, while Lavy was never boxed out when on defense and contributed his usual. All right, let's go to page 14. Lavy contributed let's see here. Page 14, where are we at? There we are. Okay, and Lavy continued his sparkling game on offense, grabbing 3 passes for substantial gains. Verne Lewellen worked the entire game at quarterback and handled the signal calling job like a past master. Lou's choice of plays was fine, and he turned in some great punting, passing, and ball carrying. Lidberg, Molenda, and McCrary were other backs who saw action, turning in their customary steady work. Packers kept the play in the Gopher territory most of the time, and only on one occasion were the invaders dangerously close to the Green Bay goal. An intercepted forward pass by Pederson, who raced to the Packer 15-yard line before he was stopped by Michael, and Llewellyn provided the threat. 4 plays failed to gain the necessary yardage from this point, however, and the Packers took the ball and punted out of danger. For the second time in as many weeks, Green Bay broke up every Gopher forward pass play tried. Not a red jacket pass was completed on Sunday. It was the same thing the week before. A similar record was made last week at Minneapolis when the Packers broke up every Minneapolis pass. So 2 weeks in a row. Now, the Minneapolis Redjackets could not complete a forward pass. Very sad. Gophers did a little better on running plays, making 5 first downs, but all were made when the invaders were in their own territory or in the center of the field. As soon as the Gophers got beyond the 50-yard line, the Packers braced. It didn't take the Packers very much time to score the first touchdown early in the first period, as an exchange of punts gave the Packers the advantage with the wind at their backs, and they took the ball in the center of the field. Llewellyn, from punt formation, hurled a pass to Dilweg, who raced down the sidelines to the 11-yard line, where he was finally knocked out of bounds by Nydahl. Herber picked up 7 yards on 3 smashes at the line, and Lou added 3 more on a cutback play to put the ball on the 1-yard line. On the next play, Lou went over the goal on a quarterback sneak. Herber's drop kick for the extra point was wide of the post, so it was a 1-yard touchdown run. The next Packers score came in the second period, and again a pass to Dilweg started the march. Herber shot a flat pass over the center to the towering end, and Lavy galloped to the 18-yard line just as the first quarter ended. A pass to Tom Nash failed, but on the second play, Lou went over tackle for a 3-yard gain. McCrary added 7 more yards on a hard plunge over the weak side for a first down on the Gopher 8-yard line. Lidberg picked up 3 yards there, added 2 more on thrusts at center, and again Llewellyn called a play for Lidberg, and the Husky fullback smashed through a hole opened by Zuver and Darling for a touchdown. Thrusts. So like maybe a 3-yard touchdown run. Herbert tried for the extra point again, was high enough, but the wide of the post, and the Packers had a 12-0 lead. Now, one thing, obviously you say that a lot of times was not stellar. The kicking, the extra points, and all the field goal tries, and certainly was not stellar. That's for darn sure. After the touchdown, Herber passed to Nash for a 30-yard gain to put the ball on the Gopher 21-yard line, and Molenda picked up 8 yards on center plunges, but the Packers drew a 25-yard penalty for harsh words to the officials, and a pass was intercepted by Erickson to end the threat. 25-yard penalty. In the third period, Herbert took a punt on his own 40-yard line and started down the field. 3 Gopher men loomed in his way, but FitzGibbons, with a fine block, took them out of the play, and Herbert continued on to the Jacket 32-yard line. Herbert then dropped back and heaved a pass to FitzGibbons, who caught the ball on the 20-yard line and outran 2 Gophers secondary men for a touchdown. So according to this, maybe a 32-yard touchdown pass. All right. Molenda sent a place kick squarely between the bars for the, hold on. Oh, boy. Here we go, for the extra point, ending the scoring for the day. The Packers went down into Minneapolis territory again in the fourth period when Zood, Mulder, Molenda, and Lewellen contributed some good gains, but they lost the ball on downs when deep in Minneapolis ground. Like I guess I guess that their field goal kickers just were not very good. I guess they didn't even try it. Field goals. Another one of the things too was that there was a point in time where the ball was like ran out of bounds. A lot of times they brought the ball. I'm not exactly sure, but I know back in 1925, the ball was run out of bounds. They brought the ball in like about at 1 yard from the out of bounds, and that's where you played it at. So sometimes they were on bad angles, so it made it very difficult to try field goal. But you will notice, I mean, sometimes in some of these games, other teams, they get down deep and they just lose the ball. They try it 4 times and they don't get a first down or a touchdown. They wind up losing. They don't even try a field goal. All right. So, but play-by-play of this game here. Michael kicked off to Erickson, who returned it to 21-yard line. Erickson made 3 yards off left tackle. Joesting made 2 yards at left guard. Pederson punted out of bounds on the Packers' 35-yard line. Now, once again, it looks like they punted it. Why they didn't try to run it one more time, I'm not, no idea. No idea. But so the Packers got the ball at the 35-yard line. Lidberg lost 1 yard. McCrary made 3 yards at right end. Lewellen passed to Dilweg, and Lavern ambled to the Jackets' 11-yard line before being downed. Herber made 2 yards at left tackle. Herber made 1 yard in the same place. Herber made 4 yards off right tackle. Lewellen plunged to the 1 foot line on the next play. Lou plunged over for a touchdown. Ta-da! So it looks like basically, I guess, to the 1 foot line. So it was like a 1 yard touchdown. So Lewellen ran in from 1 yard out. The drop kick for extra point by Herber was wide of the goalpost. Michalske, I guess. Kicked off to Haycraft, who was down on the 28-yard line by Tom Nash. Nydahl made 8 yards on a double pass play at left tackle. Joesting made 15 yards over left tackle. Herber getting the tackle on the Packer 45-yard line. Lewellen intercepted the pass by Nydahl on the 32-yard line. Herber punted a beautiful kick, the ball rolling over the goal line. Erickson and I guess brought out to the 20-yard line. So the Redjackets had the ball at their own 20. So Erickson made 3 yards at left tackle. Packers received a 5-yard penalty for being offside. Joesting made 2 yards at center for a first down. Nydahl made 12 yards for another first down over left tackle. Erickson made 1 yard at right tackle. Pass from Nydahl to Haycraft was incomplete. Pass was intercepted by Herber on the Packer 43-yard line. Herber taking the ball almost out of the hands of a jacket man. Herber made 4 yards. Lidberg made 4 yards over center. Herber made 1.5 yards at right guard. So I guess they were like a half a yard short, and they decided to punt the ball. Lewellen punted the ball going over the goal line. Nydahl made 2 yards at right tackle. Minneapolis received 5 yards for delay of delay of the game and calling signals. Erickson made 2 yards at left tackle. Pederson punted out of bounds at midfield. McCrary made 6 yards at right tackle. Packers received a 5-yard penalty for backs in motion. Herber made no gain at left tackle. Lewellen punted and McCrary down the ball on the 9-yard line. Nydahl fumbled but recovered for a 4-yard loss. Pederson punted out of bounds on his own 37-yard line. A pass from Lewellen to McCrary was incomplete. McCrary made, 6 yards, 5 or 6 yards at right end. A pass from Herbert to Dilweg put the ball on the Minneapolis 18-yard line as the second quarter ended. I'm sorry, as the first quarter ended. Now we start with the second quarter. And the Packers have the ball at the 18-yard line. A pass from Lewellen to Nash was incomplete. Lewellen made 2 yards at right end. McCrary made 8.5 yards for a first down to about the 8-yard line. On a spinner, Lidberg made 3 yards at center, down to the 5. Same play was good for 1 yard, down to about the 4. Lidberg plunged over at left guard for a touchdown, so 3 or 4 yard touchdown run. Herbert tried a drop kick for the extra point, which was wide. Michael kicked off to Erickson, who returned it to the 32-yard line. Nydahl made 4 yards at left tackle. Molenda went in for Lidberg, who was hurt on the play. Erickson made 3 yards in the same place. Joesting made 2 yards at right guard. Pederson punted, and Herber returned to the 26-yard line. Herber made 9 yards at right end. Molenda made 4 yards over right guard for a first down. McCrary made no gain at right end. Herbert tried a quick kick, and the ball was down on the Packers' 49-yard line. Dilweg intercepted a Minneapolis pass in midfield. A pass from Herbert to McCrary was incomplete. A pass from Herbert to Nash put the ball on the 21-yard line. A pass from Herbert to McCrary was incomplete. Molenda made 4.5 yards at center, and on a spinner play, Molenda made 4 yards. Molenda made 1.5 yards for a first down. Herbert made no gain at left end. Packers got a 5-yard penalty, and when Packers man talked back to the officials, the distance was increased to 25 yards. So basically, put them back almost like, my goodness. Well, I don't know, like the 35 or 40-yard line. Woo! Oh, wait, 25, like the 35-yard line. Wow. In the first play, the Jackets received the 5-yard penalty for being offside. A pass to Nash was incomplete. Lewellen tried a pass, which Erickson intercepted on the 18-yard line. Erickson lost 1 yard on first down. Pederson punted, and the ball rolled to the Packers' 10-yard line where Herber fell on it. So it looks like they punted the ball maybe on second down. Llewellyn punted, and Nydahl was down in tracks on his own 47-yard line. Pape went in for Erickson. Joesting made 1 yard over left guard. Nydahl lost 2 yards at right tackle. Herber knocked down an attempted pass. Pederson punted over the goal line. Herber made 4 yards at right end. McCrary made 1 yard at left end. Llewellyn punted, and Nydahl made a fair catch on his own 49-yard line. Pape lost 1 yard as the half would come to an end, with the score 12-0 Green Bay. So now we have the start of the third quarter. Nydahl kicked off to Llewellyn, who returned at 43 to the 43-yard line. Herber made 5 yards at left end. Herber made 3 yards over right guard. On a spinner, Molenda made 4 yards for a first down. Herber made 3 yards at right guard. Molenda made no gain. A pass from Herbert to Tom Nash was incomplete. Llewellyn punted, and the ball was down on the Jackets' 7-yard line. Erickson made no gain. Pederson punted, and Herber returned 15 yards to the Jacket 35-yard line. Molenda made no gain. A pass from Herbert to Llewellyn was incomplete. FitzGibbons made 1 yard at right end. Llewellyn punted out of bounds on the 10-yard line. Pederson lost 2 yards on a run from punt formation. Pederson punted, and Herbert picked the ball up and ran it to the Jackets' 32-yard line. Molenda would make 2 yards on a spinner play. Molenda made 2 yards more on a straight buck. Herbert passed to FitzGibbons, who ran 20 yards for a touchdown. Molenda placed kick for the extra point. Pape went in for Erickson in the Minneapolis lineup. Michael kicked off to Pederson, who returned it to the 27-yard line. So they ran the ball down to the 32-yard line. Molenda made 2 yards down to the 30. Molenda made another 2 yards down to the 28. So Herbert then passed to FitzGibbons, who ran 20 yards for a touchdown. So it was like, a 28-yard touchdown pass. And then once again with the Molenda's extra point made the score 19-0. Nydahl made no gain. Joesting made 11 yards at left end for a first down. Nydahl made 10 yards and another first down. Pape made no gain. Pape lost 3 yards on a double pass. Pederson punted and the ball was dead on the Packers' 4-yard line. Lewellen punted and Pape returned 5 yards to the 32-yard line. A pass was incomplete. Stefanich took the place of Haycraft. Pape lost 10 yards when Perry broke through and tackled him. Pederson passed and FitzGibbons intercepted on the 19-yard line. Farmer went in for Nydahl. Herber made 3 yards at left end. FitzGibbons made 2 yards at left guard. Molenda made 3 yards over center as the quarter came to an end. So the start of the fourth quarter was 19-0 Green Bay. Lewellen punted and Pape was down in his tracks on the 31-yard line. Pape lost 1 yard at left end. Pass was incomplete. Radek went in for Nash. Another incomplete pass cost Minneapolis 5 yards. Pederson punted and the ball was down on the 44-yard line. FitzGibbons made no gain. Pass from Herbert to Dilweg made 9.5 yards. Molenda made 1 yard at center for a first down. Lewellen tried a pass, which Pederson intercepted. All right, go back up to the top up here. All the way up to the top. Is that it? Up. Wait. Hold on. I went past it. Oh, there we go. Intercepted and ran it back to the Packers' 16-yard line before he was down. Both sides were offside on the first play. Joesting made 1.5 yards. Joesting held for no gain. Pape lost 4 yards at right end. The next play was a pass which Radek knocked down. Lewellen punted out of bounds on the Jacket 19-yard line. A pass was intercepted by Molenda on the 26-yard line. Zoodmulder went in for Herber. Zuver went in for Darling. Packers got 5 yards for offsides. A pass from Zoodmulder to FitzGibbons was incomplete. A pass from Molenda to Radek was incomplete, and another 5-yard penalty. Another from Molenda to Dilweg was also incomplete for another 5-yard penalty. Lewellen punted over goal line. Farmer made 5 yards off right tackle. A pass was incomplete. Another was incomplete and cost another 5 yards. Farmer punted and Zoodmulder returned 10 yards to the 35-yard line. Zoodmulder made 4 yards off of right tackle. Molenda made 2 yards and repeated the play again for the same distance. Zoodmulder made 6 yards for a first down. Zoodmulder made 3 yards at right tackle. Molenda made 4 yards over center. Zoodmulder held for no gain. Lewellen made 2.5 yards. Minneapolis took the ball on downs on its own 13-yard line. So once again, they had the ball down around like the 15, 16-yard line. Why they didn't try a field goal? No idea. A pass from Pape to Farmer was incomplete. Pape made 8 yards at left end. No gain on an out-of-bounds play. Farmer punted to Zoodmulder, who was down on the 43-yard line. Zoodmulder made no gain. Zoodmulder made 15 yards over left tackle. FitzGibbons made 2 yards, and Molenda made 8 as the game came to an end with the final score, 19-0 Green Bay. But wait, there's more. We have some game time statistics here. According to them, the Packers had 12 first downs. Minneapolis only had 5. Now they could. I'll tell you what, they could punt. They could punt. Lewellen punted 9 times for 54 yards. Herbert 2 times for 50 yards. Pederson punted 9 times for 48 yards. Farmer punted 3 times for 27 yards. Packers attempted 17 passes, completed 5. Okay. Completed 5 for 145 yards, 10 incomplete passes, and 2 were intercepted. Once again, Minneapolis, they attempted 14 passes. They completed 9. 9 were incomplete, 5 were intercepted. Packers had 6 penalties for 40 yards. Minneapolis had 4 penalties for 20 yards. Now this is their running, right? Packers ran the ball 52 times for a grand total of 157 yards, averaged 3 yards a play on their runs. Minneapolis picked up 52 yards on 28 running plays, averaged 2 yards a play. Just not very good. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't complete a pass. Then we have sidelights. I tell you what, this paper is just unbelievable. Absolutely fantastic. Annual homecoming ceremonies took place between halves of the game. 16 players who contributed largely to the Packers' success in years gone by were introduced. Jab Murray, now mayor of Marinette, Cub Buck, businessman Eddie Codell, Lawrence College, Oh. Let's see. Anything else here? Herb Joesting, former All-American with Minnesota, was the best ground gainer for the Redjackets. Early in the game, he broke through between tackle and end for a 15-yard dash to the Packers' 45-yard line. Lewellen intercepted a pass on his own 33-yard line on the next play to halt the Jackets' march. Herber got off a great kick in the first period. Standing on his own 20-yard line, he kicked over the Gopher goal line. So I guess not over there, but maybe it bounced and all that, like 80 yards total. He had the advantage of wind, but the ball traveled 80 yards. Darling played most of the game at center, but had to be relieved in the fourth quarter when a kick in the nose started blood flowing. Zuver took his place and turned in a nice game. Zuver had worked the entire first half at guard. Whitey Wooden was used at the right guard in the second half and was conspicuous once again, getting many tackles and leading the interference on some of the offensive plays. Lidberg, who was also injured, but not seriously, he sustained cuts over and under his right eye in the second period, and Molenda took up the fullback duties, finishing the game. Perry relieved Sleight in the second half at a tackle position and was prominent once again. On one occasion, he broke through the jacket interference to throw Pape for a 10-yard loss. The Legion band was on hand. Again, entertaining between halves and before the game. The game was broadcast by radio stations WHBY and WTMJ. Nate Barriger, All-American center with Minneapolis team, did not play as injuries kept him on the sidelines. The towering pivot man hurt his leg last week and finished the game, and after 2 days of rest tried to resume practice, but he was forced to rest again. Ken Haycraft, former West High Marquette star, was used at end in the last period in place of Nash, who retired after turning in a fine game. Haycraft was in the thick of the play and got several tackles. He also knocked down 2 Red Jacket forward passes. Joesting and Nydahl were called on for most of the ball carrying for the Red Jackets. They were outstanding men on the Minneapolis backfield, while Haycraft turned in a good game at end. I think that's about it. Yeah, so I mean, tell you what, the coverage from the Green Bay Press Gazette is absolutely fantastic. Really, really is. I mean, not only you get like a play-by-play of exactly what happened, but then they have all the stats, how many first downs each team got, how many yards each guy got running. You don't get that. That's very, very rare. Very, very rare. But so the Green Bay Packers prevail once again. The Minneapolis Redjackets were just horrible. They were horrible. The Green Bay Packers, I mean, the Green Bay was the best team in football that year. They did. Tell you what, I mean, you look at their line, they did not have a ton of stars, shall we say, but the guys that they did have were pretty special. Pretty special. So that's the score here. The Green Bay Packers would wind up winning 19-0 and go 6-0 on the 1930 NFL season. So that's what happened on this date, October 26th, 1930, between the Minneapolis Redjackets and the Green Bay Packers at City Stadium in the pro football's first 50 years. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.